spoke about being bullied as a child and even placed on a special bus. What did that experience do to your sense of self?
Yeah, so I was at school in the 80s, and the 80s was a fun time for a lot of people, but for me personally it wasn't. So I was at school, and in the 80s I didn't really know what was sort of going on, but for me when I was reading, so if I read a book or write, the writing, I wasn't very good at writing, but my reading, so if I looked at a book, the words would be, one would be over here, one would be down there. It was like the sea. So I couldn't, I just couldn't see the words. So remember if you go and stand up in a classroom, they say I'll read the book out, and I'd literally want the world to like fall apart and let me hide because I didn't want to have to do it. But as time progressed, they could see I had problems, and then I was put in the bottom groups of all like English, maths, everything pretty much. And then I was bullied, oh, here comes Fico, stupid, dunce, div. And that was hard enough, especially as a kid, I didn't really have anyone to turn to, if I'm honest. I did have my nan, was very close, but my dad was a workaholic. My mum didn't really, I don't know, she was sort of more, she was always with my dad, and she had my sister. She was born, so I didn't really have a lot of time for me. Not that they weren't not loving parents, but they loved me in a different way. So for school and growing up, that was incredibly difficult. But I think the worst part was when I was told I had to go on a special bus, and you can imagine the ridicule. And I'm just going to say something. A few names I was called, and I'm not saying it to anyone to hurt anyone. Or I just want them to understand what I was called, and I'd never say this to anybody. But I used to get, when I was getting the bus, how many windows are you going to lick today? And you'd get the signs like, here comes Spazzy Modo, and just names like that. But as a young kid, that really takes shape of who you are. So when I left school, I just thought I was really stupid, I was thick. And when I just went to do my GCSEs, because I didn't do very well, if I'm honest, I even turned up to do one and I got ungraded. Only thinking, God, like I should have got something for turning up, and I didn't. But when I was like at the end of the year, you're leaving school, one of the teachers come up to me, and they were going around the sort of the whole of their room, like, well done Stephen, you're going to be sort of rocket scientist, and well done Jeremy, you're going to be XYZ, and they were really positive. And then the teacher came to me, and I don't think she's being nasty, I don't think so, but I don't know, I was young, but she said to me, oh, you'll probably end up in McDonald's, or maybe behind a bar, or basically just writing me off. And again, I love McDonald's, so don't get me wrong, I don't mind a burger, but it's just that she felt they were going all around the classroom giving everyone real praise and they were going to do really well, and then when it got to me, and I left school, just that I was thick and stupid and I'd never achieve anything, so it's hard.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I think they didn't know better, those teachers, because if they did, they wouldn't. As a child, most of them are also parents. Yes. They wouldn't want somebody to downgrade or insult your children because of what they're going through. And I guess then it wasn't prevalent in terms of special needs.
No,
I don't think it was that prevalent then. They didn't know what it was. It was until recently that research has been carried out, and they started differentiating the different types of special needs, like autism, the autism spectrum, and things like that. So I do understand that must have been very tough for you as well.
Yes, it was tough, as you say, but I don't. I'm glad though today I am dyslexic, but at the time I wasn't. You said you just feel different from everybody else, that you don't fit in and you're not normal. And all I ever wanted to be when I was at that school was normal. I just wanted to be like everyone else, and I knew I wasn't. But then again, as you say, I don't blame the school, because as you say, they didn't have the information they have, like even like 20 years ago. They've only just, as I say, the last 20 years got to know things and understand things, but back then you didn't know, so I can't blame them at all, and I don't. It's just one of those things that happened.
Thank you for sharing this. And another thing I wanted to say was, You didn't have friends. There was nobody to support you.
Yeah, so I mean, I had like one or two friends who I was close with, but again, I'd never talk about that. One of them was younger than me, so it's in a different group. So, I mean, I did, you know, I had a few friends, but not really like loads of friends, or anyone that I can confide in. And I suppose this is where I should have done. So I think anyone listening, I should have spoke up. I should have spoke to people, but I didn't. I kept it all bottled up inside, and I think that's where one, you know, obviously knowing today, was one of the problems. You know, you didn't have a special needs teacher, or I couldn't really speak to my family. My family aren't like that. You don't, you know, you wouldn't speak to my family about that. They'd be like, oh, they'd brush it off, you know, oh, don't be silly. So I didn't really have anyone to speak to, and I think that was the hard part. I think if I'd spoke to somebody, it probably would have helped, but I didn't, and I wish I'd had.
And for listeners, if you've got children with special needs, encourage them to always talk about what's ailing them or what is happening to them at school. And you've proven your teachers and the naysayers wrong with what you've achieved today.
Yes. Well, as you say, when you told you amount to nothing and you were stupid, again, as you say, I never thought I would even write a book, and I've written a book and created a magazine. But back then I couldn't even, as you say, read them up. But don't get me wrong, it's not been easy. I've had to really push myself. I wrote it a couple of times, scrapped it, kept pushing, and I hated reading. So for someone who doesn't like reading, I hated it, but I made myself read. I pushed myself. I kept writing and writing. I studied then journalism to be able to be really good at what I wanted to do, and that was to read and write. And so the thing maybe listeners are probably the worst thing at is actually my superpower, which is actually crazy, because if you asked me like 20-30 years ago, I'm like, oh god, I hate reading, I hate writing. For me, writing and reading was like pulling the teeth out. I hated it that much. But now I actually sit and read, and I'm like, my god, what is wrong with me? But now I love it. So yeah, maybe any listeners out there, your weakness could possibly be your absolute strength, and it is mine.
Thank you. And I guess our listeners would take a cue on that always work on your weaknesses to get better.